Marvel's new god, the man who outsmarted the Avengers. Please like, share and subscribe. Episode 81. Blame yourself? I. At this time, facing Jane Foster's gaze, Soul's face turned red, and he wanted to refute but had nothing to say. Because he simply could not find an excuse to refute it. Snap. And at this moment, Lin Fan clapped his palms and walked in. He cast an appreciative look at Jane Foster. Regarding the mess of the Thor family, he was really too lazy to care, but he couldn't help but have already agreed to it. But fortunately, with Jane Foster, this tool person is not generally easy to use. But he heard Jane Foster angry at Thor. Thor wouldn't be touched, but at least the problem was there. It also saves him from wasting his tongue himself. Miss Foster is really smart and can see the problem at a glance. Chuckling and nodding, Lin Fan's expression became indifferent again when he turned to look at Soul. This distinction immediately made Thor uncomfortable to death. But he couldn't even refute it. Listening to Jane Foster's criticism of himself, although he was very unconvinced in his heart, he couldn't find a reason to justify. And this just shows that his previous behavior was indeed wrong. Otherwise, why would his father be so angry? Thor. Sitting back in his place, Lin Fan said indifferently. This is the case, your father wants you to realize your mistakes, and whether you can change it or not, that's your own problem. Of course, the habits that a person has developed for thousands of years cannot be changed at all. So you just have to be honest and go through the process. When the time is right, you will naturally be able to regain your divine power and return to Asgard. Speaking of this, Lin Fan seemed very casual. But in the end, he said in an uncommittal tone. But in the meantime, I don't want you to get me in trouble. You. Thor glared at Lin Fan, but he couldn't even speak. So much so that his whole face turned red. You must know that he is a dignified thunder god, but now he was first angered by Jane Foster, and then he was so despised by Lin Fan. If it was before, he definitely wanted to let the other party know the majesty of Thor. It's a pity that there is no if, and now he is a waste. And the weak are 04 who have no right to resist. How? Are you not convinced? Lin Fan looked at Soul coldly and said disdainfully. You know it's very upset, but have you ever thought that once the war between Jotunheim and Asgard breaks out, how many people will fall into this embarrassing situation? With your own strength, how many enemies do you think you can block? And those secret enemies? If they take advantage of the fire and rob, then the legendary Ragnarok will no longer be a legend. After all, he received the money, and Lin Fan couldn't help but say 2 more words. But he didn't waste too much tongue. Think about it yourself. Too lazy to pay any more attention to Thor, Lin Fan nodded at Jane Foster, got up directly and left the room. But not long after Lin Fan left, Apocalypse walked in from outside. 2. I have prepared a room for you. Apocalypse nodded politely and said with a smile. The Master has instructed me that until Mr. Thor leaves Earth, all your consumption will be taken care of by the Hand Association. But the Master also has a request, that is, you can't just leave New York. I hope you two can understand my difficulties. Saying that, Apocalypse bowed and made a letter of invitation. Jane Foster suddenly became entangled and said, Can't leave New York? But I still had to do research with my supervisor, and I left without notifying them. Don't worry, Miss Foster. Tianchi smiled and said without the slightest concern. I don't restrict your movements, so you are free. Thank you so much. Jane Foster breathed a sigh of relief when she heard this. In fact, to be honest, she didn't feel that Lin Fan was excessive, and she even felt that she was very lucky. Seeing so many strange things is like dreaming. Although this is not quite the same scene as she imagined. But the magical ability Lin Fan displayed, as well as the existence of aliens, still made her feel very novel. If she could, she certainly wanted to know more. Instead, she was grateful that Lin Fan didn't drive her away. Thor wanted to say something, not wanting to be restricted from his freedom. No matter how you say it, he is also a dignified thunder. But meeting the indifferent eyes of the Apocalypse, his body suddenly trembled, and the words he wanted to say directly choked back. Jane Foster on the side couldn't bear it, but still persuaded. Although I am an outsider and should not be involved in your family affairs, I think you are too irresponsible for yourself. This is not what a prince should be. Peace is the most important thing for the people and for the whole country. Maybe you can try to experience the life of ordinary people as an ordinary person. That might help you. Jane Foster is still a woman after all. For a confused and painful man like Thor, she subconsciously gave birth to pity. And her words are also suggestions from the heart. Well, thanks. Looking at Jane Foster, Thor nodded heavily after a moment of silence. This is his only and best option at the moment. Really let him disobey Lin Fan's words, not to mention what the price is. Wouldn't he have failed his father's painstaking efforts? I just hope that the process will not be too long and that he can pass the test early. 2, please come with me. Apocalypse said, leading the two directly out of the room. Saul and his wife also temporarily live in New York. With the funds provided by the Hand Association, the two of them eat, drink and have fun, and the little life is called a moisturization. During this time, Jane Foster also contacted his mentor. But she just said she was going to be away for a while. Regarding the existence of Sol and Lin Fan, she did not say a word, and she was perfunctory in the face of her mentor's questioning. It can only be said that women are really fickle. At the same time, Jane Foster's mentor was unlucky. He was doing research on celestial bodies. As a result, the door was suddenly kicked open, and a group of people claiming to be SHIELD officials directly packed their research materials and equipment and took them away. Even they themselves were subjected to lengthy interrogation and investigation. For a while, all their research efforts were in vain. Professor Eric and his student Daisy together decided to travel to New York to find Jane Foster. One is because they have nowhere to go. The second is because of concerns about Jane Foster. And they were curious about how Jane Foster had crossed thousands of miles in just a few hours? Could it be that Jane Foster will still move instantly? At the same time, Lin Fan had just returned to Stark Manor. A man walked out of the manor. Under Pepper's farewell, the man got into the car and left, keeping a gentle smile on his face. But when the car left the manor, the man suddenly sank into the water. Tony Stark. You actually rejected me again. The man gritted his teeth and said, scolding hatefully. Since you don't know how to lift, then I will let you know how stupid your decision was in the first place and even now. Saying that, the man took out a communicator. This is multi-encrypted. Dialing a number, the man said in a deep voice to the other side of the communication. Let the 13th come out and have fun. Pepper, who is that guy? Listening to the conversation that the Red Queen monitored, Lin Fan asked knowingly. He? Pepper glanced at the disappearing car, shook his head and smiled bitterly. His name is Killian, a former classmate of mine, who wants to meet Tony through me. He should want to pull investment, but you also know Tony's nature. Understand and understand. Lin Fan smiled and didn't say anything more. But in his heart, he was calculating. If he guessed correctly, this person should be the developer of the desperate virus, Tony's former dog-licking fan. It's a pity that because of love, Killian hates Tony because of love. This led to a subsequent series of retaliation and other troubles. I really didn't expect that in addition to being popular with women, Tony is also so attractive to men. Chuckling secretly, Lin Fan decided to talk to Tony. Read violent novels, just go to Feilu Fiction Network. Such an interesting thing cannot be hidden. And in front of Pepper, using this to tease Tony's words, that scene will definitely be very interesting. Soon, Lin Fan walked back to the manor with Pepper. However, in secret, he commanded the Red Queen. Queen Red, help me monitor that guy's every move, if I can. I need to get all the information about the desperate virus. Yes, Master. After the Red sweet response, immediately start the operation. Lin Fan did not continue to pay attention to this. It is believed that with the ability of the Red Queen, no one has been able to stop him on the Earth today. Unless it is the future Ultron or Vision is born in advance. Soon the two returned to the villa. Tony, who was sitting in the living room, happened to see Lin Fan, who came back with Pepper, and complained angrily. This isn't our busy Mr. Lin. Poof. When Pepper heard this, he couldn't help it. She didn't know about Lin Fan and the others' previous experiences, so she didn't understand the meaning of Tony's words. She only thought that Tony was just to tease Lin Fan. Rolling his eyes, Pepper immediately said, Mr. Lin, you are also true. I gave you the best Natasha, but I don't know how long it has been since I went to the company these days. Natasha? Hasn't she quit yet? Hearing this, Lin Fan was slightly surprised. Natasha interviewed Stark Industries, simply to complete the task assigned by the Black Brine. This is one of the reasons why he is too lazy to run inside the company. But I didn't expect the other party to give up yet. Of course not. Speaking of business, Pepper said seriously. People told me, originally they still had a very good impression of you, but it's a pity that the falling flowers are deliberately ruthless. Oops, someone's charm is so great. Tony teased in a sour tone. Natasha, he had seen it too. Although he didn't want to admit it, among the women he had played with, none could compare to Natasha. That perfect face, proud figure, and the temperament of the royal sister are simply amazing. Originally, he wanted to accept it as his secretary. But because Pepper stepped in sideways and gave Natasha to Lin Fan, he had to give up. But I didn't expect that Lin Fan didn't know how to cherish it at all. Shouldn't Lin Fan be able to do it in some way? Tony teased, and immediately cast a mocking gaze towards Lin Fan. You bastard! Lin Fan noticed Tony's gaze, and suddenly said without a good breath. I'm not interested in that dangerous woman. Tony, if you want, try Black Widow. Huh? Black Widow? Hearing this, Pepper said with some dissatisfaction. Mr. Lin, how can you say that? Natasha's family is a girl, it's too rude. Wait. Tony on the side said in a bad tone. Lin Fan, what the hell is going on? Black Widow, shouldn't it be Natasha's code name? Smart as Tony, instantly aware of the problem. Lin Fan has no concept of sexism. So this means that the reason why Lin Fan called Natasha Black Widow is actually another deep meaning. Moreover, at the original pool party, he knew very well that Lin Fan was also interested in women. So why did he reject Natasha so much? Natasha. Black Widow. These two keywords instantly reminded him of certain intelligence organizations. It's like he gave himself the code name Iron Man. Code name? Pepper was slightly stunned, not knowing why. But then her body shook, covered her mouth and exclaimed. Wouldn't you? Natasha, she. How can it be? She obviously came in normally. Okay, don't guess. Seeing the solemn expressions of the two, Lin Fan waved his hand and said. It's not as complicated as you think, it's that Coulson, you should remember, right? Natasha was his colleague. Coulson? Pepper and Tony looked at each other and said in unison. Bureau of Homeland Strategy and Logistics? 660 for S.H.I.E.L.D. Lin Fan explained casually. Hearing this, Pepper's face suddenly became solemn, and at the same time a little sad. She felt that her true heart had been betrayed. Obviously she valued Natasha so much, and tried to match the other party in Lin Fan, but Natasha turned out to be an agent? At this point, she wanted Natasha to question, but finally held back. Tony, by contrast, doesn't have as many scruples. Dismiss her. Looking deeply at Lin Fan, Tony said in a deep voice. Just send someone to spy on me, and even send agents to my company, those guys are really damn bastards. Tony was in a very unhappy mood at this time. Originally, the guy named Killian just now was very familiar with Pepper, which made him a little surprised. As a result, now that this kind of thing has happened, he is even more upset. Tony, calm down. Pepper quickly tried to comfort Tony. But when Lin Fan heard this, he was not impressed at all. Don't worry so much, Natasha is just to spy on you and listen to me at the same time, staying is just enough to help Pepper run the company. Ah. Pepper was immediately dumbfounded when he heard this. Let an agent help run the company, are you sure you are not luring wolves into the house? On the contrary, Tony seriously considered it. So be it. Saying that, he commanded Jarvis. Jarvis, help me keep an eye on that woman Natasha, if she makes a small move, report it to me as soon as possible. Yes, sir. Jarvis's icy voice sounded. After doing this, Tony looked at Lin Fan and said without a good breath. Lin Fan, you should have known for a long time, right? I know it the first time. Lin Fan did not have the slightest weakness of heart and admitted it calmly. This suddenly left Tony speechless for a while. He really wanted to anger Lin Fan, but found that he had no reason to challenge Lin Fan, and finally he could only snort coldly in displeasure. Okay, don't tease you. Lin Fan shrugged and explained. Although S.H.I.E.L.D. does not do things properly, it will definitely not hurt you, and there is someone else who really wants to hurt you. Saying that, Lin Fan glanced at Pepper, causing the latter to be confused. Hey, Mr. Lin, what do you think of me? Pepper asked with some disgust. Tony and Banner on the side suddenly cast strange eyes, and Tony glared even more angrily. You kid peeked at me, Tony Stark woman, huh? Don't know what it means to be a friend's wife and can't be bullied? Ahem. Lin Fan was embarrassed, and quickly waved his hand. Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about Pepper, but Pepper's old classmate. Killian? Pepper exclaimed in disbelief. But then she quickly denied it. Impossible. Although Killian I don't have much contact, he and Tony don't have any grudges, why hurt Tony? Humph. I knew that guy wasn't a good thing. Tony grumbled coldly. Episode 82. Hearing what Tony said, Pepper suddenly said with disgust. Tony, I said we're just friends, don't be so stingy. Am I petty? Tony was furious and stood up abruptly. He felt like he was going to be green. Hey! Seeing that the two were about to quarrel, Lin Fan quickly stopped. If you want to quarrel, then I don't care about it. When something happens, don't blame me for not reminding you. Humph. Pepper snorted coldly, "Don't go over the top in dissatisfaction. Tony is a damn bastard." Obviously, she has nothing to do with Killian, but Tony is too petty to slander her. "And you often spend days drinking with beautiful women, did I say anything?" Tony was also a little embarrassed at this time. Quarreling with his girlfriend and being watched by Lin Fan and others really made him very dead. But thinking of what Lin Fan said, he endured embarrassment and asked, "Ahem, what is that, Lin Fan? What did you mean by what happened? Since it's not shield, is it that Kiheen?" Saying that, his eyes were a little wandering, and he did not dare to look directly at Lin Fan. Pepper turned around dissatisfied when he heard this. Tony smeared the black family Killian, "This is not a gentleman's belly with a villain's heart." Although even she really didn't feel much for Killian. But at this moment, Lin Fan nodded and said, "That's right, you're right." "What?" Pepper exclaimed when he heard this. Originally, she thought that Killian was a good person, but Tony treated a gentleman's belly with a villain's heart. But at this time, she didn't expect Lin Fan to agree with this? Could it be that Killian really had bad intentions? You must know that for Lin Fan, Pepper is still very convinced. After all, Lin Fan has helped them a lot. "Look! I knew he wasn't a good thing." Tony suddenly became interested when he heard this, and shouted proudly. He tilted his head and looked at Pepper proudly. "Just you're smart." Pepper, who was already angry, snorted. Ignoring Tony, she looked at Lin Fan nervously and asked, "Mr. Lin, what the hell is going on? Is there really something wrong with Killian? That means..." Tony was also a little puzzled. "Didn't I just not agree to his investment? Even if he is unhappy in his heart, he shouldn't hate me so much, right? Then you really underestimate yourself." Hearing what Tony said, Lin Fan shook his head meaningfully. "Good fellow, you really don't know your charm." Thinking of Killian's guy because of love and hatred, the corners of Lin Fan's mouth raised slightly, and he looked at Tony with a smile. "You? What do you think I do?" Tony suddenly felt a little weak. I don't know why, he always felt that Lin Fan's eyes were strange. With his understanding of Lin Fan, he was definitely not at ease. He immediately interrupted the topic. But before he could speak, Lin Fan was the first to speak. "It's not just a matter of investment, Tony, you remember more than 10 years ago, on the shores of Daming Lake. Ahem, is there the man who met at the prom?" Lin Fan almost couldn't help laughing out loud as he spoke. Between Tony and Killian, it is really a bad fate, and it is also a talent to be remembered for more than 10 years. The point is that Killian, in order to take revenge on Tony, that is called a spare. Even in the end, he became a guinea pig. More than a decade ago? Ball? Man? Hearing what Lin Fan said, several people present were suddenly a little dumbfounded. Isn't that man supposed to be Killian? And the man at the ball, one side, no matter how you look at it, makes people think of it. The one that will not be between these two. I don't know what to think. Pepper suddenly looked at Tony in amazement. "I'm not. I didn't. Don't talk nonsense." Feeling the strange expressions of everyone, Tony immediately denied 3 times. He waited for this Lin Fan with a black face and gritted his teeth and said, "Lin Fan, you tell me clearly, I am a pure straight man of steel, I am not interested in men, you can't stain people's innocence out of thin air." Poof. Hearing this, Pepper couldn't help it. Sure enough, only Lin Fan could cure Tony. Even Banner forced a smile and subconsciously stayed away from Tony, for fear that the other party had some special proclivities. Seeing this, Tony was even more angry and corrupted, and almost wanted to fight with Lin Fan's real man. His innocence could not be destroyed in Lin Fan's hands. "I'm not kidding. Because that's exactly what it is." Meeting Tony's cannibalistic gaze, Lin Fan forced a smile and said, "One of the reasons why Killian came to you is to attract investment, and the other is to meet the man he likes." As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere suddenly froze. Pepper's beautiful eyes widened. She looked at Lin Fan in disbelief, but then looked at Tony even more incredulously. Shouldn't Tony really have any special fetishes? She didn't expect that she would have to compete with those glamorous and cheap goods, and now she has to guard against men's covetousness. Will the rest of the day come on? Especially that Killian. When she was an old classmate, she originally wanted to help introduce her. After all, it is also to help Stark Industries expand its business. But who would have thought that people were Ming Shou Plank Road, Dark Shin Song, in fact, coveted Tony's beauty? It can only be said that the world is declining, and people's hearts are not ancient. "Lin Fan, you bastard." Seeing that he had become a subordinate man, Tony suddenly became angry. He stood up abruptly. As soon as he thought of being destroyed to show his innocence, his face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and he immediately prepared to find Lin Fan to settle the account. Even if he knew that he couldn't beat Lin Fan, he would have to splash blood on the spot to prove his innocence. Tony, don't do this, calm down. Pepper hurriedly stopped Tony's provocative behavior. Even Banner, who was watching the excitement, stood up to stop Tony, for fear that Tony would accidentally ask for trouble. You also don't look at how many pounds and tails you have, why do you provoke Lin Fan? Let go of me. You guys let me go. Tony yelled, but couldn't struggle in the slightest. Helplessly, he questioned Lin Fan. Lin Fan, you make it clear to me, I don't know that guy at all, why are you slandering people's innocence out of thin air? Hey, people like you so much, but you forget about them. Lin Fan was not angry, but shook his head with emotion. He said indifferently directly into the air. Red Queen, show the friendship of others, let our Mr. Stark die a happy death. Okay, Master. The playful voice of the Red Queen sounded. Suddenly Pepper and Banner were shocked and said in disbelief. This is? Artificial intelligence. Lin Fan explained indifferently. Not to mention what kind of shock Lin Fan's answer caused in the hearts of Pepper and Banner. The Red Queen broke into the control network in the manner. Ignoring Jarvis's resistance, Red Queen directly manipulated the projection system and projected the information found in front of Lin Fan and the others. Buzz. The projection reveals that on it is the story that Tony and Killian have to tell. It was a dance party that took place more than a decade ago. Tony, who was still young and frivolous at the time, lived a life of wandering wrecks every day, and also showed unparalleled talent in the field of scientific research. This has also led to countless women eager to climb into Tony's bed. This is true even for men. And Killian is one of them. At this ball, Killian takes his first draft of the desperate virus and tries to get Tony's funding. For his little fan brother, Tony, who is picking up a girl, casually perfunctory. Tony told Killian to wait for him on the rooftop for a while. Killian foolishly believed it. But the result was Tony partying with beautiful women all night, and Killian was shivering from the rooftop, alone in the cold wind. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. This also causes Killian to hate because of love and vow to take revenge on Tony. And the time also came to more than 10 years later. Killian finally perfected the desperate virus and achieved remarkable experimental results. This time, Killian came to Tony confidently to pretend. As Lin Fan said, one is to cooperate, and the other is to prove oneself and make former idols realize their mistakes. Unfortunately, neither of Killian's goals was achieved. Tony didn't even have the idea of seeing him. Even more than 10 years have passed, Tony has long forgotten him and feels guilty. This immediately angered Killian, and anger was born to take revenge on Tony. At the end of the projection is a recording of the communication. Since you don't know how to lift, then I will let you know how stupid your decision was in the first place and even now. Let them come out on the 13th and have fun. As the projection ended, the mood of the few people present was extremely heavy. They didn't expect the truth to be like this. But they have to admit that although Killian is a bit paranoid, Tony's behavior is also a bit excessive. If you're not interested in people's research, just reject it. Otherwise, it will not force a little fan brother into an enemy. Of course, if you seriously say it, Tony is just a matter of character, but Killian is a complete villain. Just because others reject you, you have to commit some kind of retaliation. Isn't that too blind? Damn it! That bastard, what the hell is he trying to do? Knowing that he was being targeted, Tony's already darkened face became more and more gloomy. He was never afraid that someone would do something to him. But what worries him the most is the people around him. In case Pepper is affected in the process, he will have no place to cry even if he cries. In particular, he admitted that he had not taken the initiative to provoke Killian at all. That guy is a complete pervert, crazy. Tony, shall we call the police? Pepper said with some concern. At this time, she was also difficult to cherish, but she did not expect that Killian, who seemed to have a kind attitude, turned out to be such a sinister villain behind her back. If something happens to Tony, she will die. After all, Killian was brought in by her. If she could, she would like to receive official protection. Nope. But alas, Tony directly refused. He said in an uncommittal tone. Whatever that bastard wants to do, I'll do it all. I'm going to see what he can do. As he spoke, he made up his mind in his heart. For the enemy, it is necessary to knock to death with a stick. Next, he will work overtime to create a full vibranium nano armor as soon as possible. Only in this way can we have more confidence in facing Killian's retaliation. And Pepper can't go to the company anymore. Thinking of this, Tony immediately looked at Pepper and said, Pepper, you don't go to the company lately, just work from home, I'm worried that he will do something to you. Probably not. Hearing this, Pepper subconsciously wanted to refute. How to say that they are also old classmates? But thinking of the voice just now, her face was very ugly, and she couldn't help but worry in her heart. The enemy is in the dark, and the situation is very unfavorable to them. Don't worry, Pepper. I'll fix that bastard. Seeing Pepper's apprehension, Tony held Pepper's soft shade in one hand and soothed. Pepper suddenly became a little embarrassed. But Tony didn't realize it, and turned to look at Lin Fan and said, Lin Fan, do you know anything else? Please tell me all, please. Tony looked at Lin Fan with a sincere expression. Since Lin Fan knew these old things, and even found out that Killian had bad intentions, maybe he would find out more information. If they can be prepared in advance, they can also be less dangerous. I know a little bit about it. Lin Fan nodded and said indifferently. The research project in Killian's hands is called the Desperate Virus, and it is a human enhancement test. Once injected into the body, it will cause some kind of mutation in the human body. The loser's body will explode directly. Those who succeed will get physical enhancement and special abilities to master flames. With Lin Fan's narration, the three of Tony became more and more frightened. They didn't expect Killian to be so powerful. After more than 10 years of research projects, it has been possible to transform the human body and strengthen the superpower who controls the flame. This means that Killian already has successful cases of experimentation in his hands. The number 13 in the previous voice may be one of them. At the thought of facing the threat of superpowers at all times, Tony's face suddenly became extremely ugly. You must know that he and Pepper are mortals in the flesh. If this is attacked by the other party, it is estimated that they will directly burp without wearing battle armor. Abominable. No, I can't sit still. For a while, Tony's mood was extremely heavy. If he could, he would have decided to strike first and strangle the enemy in the cradle. And if you want to do all this, you still need Lin Fan's help. Any other news? Lin Fan, do you know the location of their base? Tony asked repeatedly. I don't know. Lin Fan shook his head, but then nodded again. However, through the logistics situation of Killian's company, the Red Queen has analyzed the possible location, but I advise you to better not act impulsively. While speaking, the Red Queen switches to a new projection again. A map of an industrial park is displayed on it. Vehicles coming and going, with a very abnormal frequency of traffic, are close to it, showing that there must be something strange in it. Even at the end of some streets, you can still see the shadow of these vehicles. Wherever those vehicles pass, there will be homeless people mysteriously disappearing. The meaning behind this is naturally self-evident. Bastard! These guys actually did experiments with that homeless man? How many lives have been killed? Listening to the analysis results of the Red Queen, Tony and the others showed a scowl on their faces. Killian, this guy is simply personal scum. It's not even an exaggeration. Even the word scum is not enough to describe Killian's actions. Mr. Lin, can you give us this information? Pepper endured his anger and said sincerely. If we have this evidence, we can call the police and have the officials arrest Killian in them. It's useless, Pepper. Without waiting for Lin Fan to answer, Tony shook his head and said. Since he dares to do this, there is definitely someone behind him to support him, and these evidences are only inferences, and there is no way to prove anything. But when Pepper heard this, he wanted to refute 2 sentences. But Tony said in a deep voice. Okay, Pepper, I can fix these things. Saying that, he just stood up. Thank you, Lin Fan. Solemnly thanked Lin Fan, his heart was full of gratitude. If it weren't for Lin Fan, I'm afraid that even if he encountered danger, he wouldn't know where the enemy came from. But now it's not. With preparation, they already have a great advantage. And all this was thanks to Lin Fan's reminder. Ha! Lin Fan smiled and looked indifferent. He just casually reminded that it is naturally an excellent bow to get favors. Anyway, he doesn't need to pay anything. And it's not nice to say. If he really wanted to make a move, he would have discovered Killian's identity just now, and he would be able to pinch the other party to death at will. But he obviously won't do it, after all, there is no need. Not everyone is worth his shot. What's more, besides Killian, he has more important things to do. The Red Queen is not simple to find out behind this person. Episode 83. If you need me, you can ask me for help. Lin Fan said indifferently. Well, thank you. Tony was overjoyed and became more and more grateful to Lin Fan. But he still wants to be on his own. Thinking of the vibranium in his hand, he immediately pulled Banner to the research room, ready to create a nano-vibranium armor as soon as possible. Soon, only Lin Fan and Pepper were left sitting in the living room. Pepper, be careful yourself, lately. Lin Fan didn't stay here too much. After admonishing, he also returned to his room, ready to retreat and practice again. But before that, he commanded to the Red Queen. Inform the Apocalypse and tell him the news about this person of Kyrian, and the person behind it is likely to be Mandarin. Yes, Master. The sweet voice of the Red Queen sounded. In the room, Lin Fan secretly groaned, feeling that things were very coincidental. Even he didn't expect Lord Man to appear so timely. Originally, he also thought of asking the Hand Association to investigate on his behalf. As a result, there is no news from the Apocalypse, but here in Kyrian, the existence of the Mandarin was found out by the Red Queen. The person behind Killian's desperate virus project is likely to be Mandarin. And the true identity of Lord Manchu is Su Wunwu, the owner of the 10 rings. It really didn't take any effort. Muttering secretly, Lin Fan did not continue to pay attention to these. Everything that should be commanded has already been commanded. As long as Killian contacts Lord Man, the Red Queen can monitor it as soon as possible and pass the news to the Apocalypse. At that time, the Hand Association can further investigate until the location of the Mandarin is found. For Lord Man and 10 rings, Lin Fan was very curious. Are the 10 rings alien objects or immortal weapons? If it is according to the original setting, the 10 rings are the magic weapon of the Jade Emperor in ancient times, and it has very powerful and terrifying power. Being able to relate to a powerful person like the Jade Emperor is enough to see the extraordinary nature of the 10 rings. At the very least, it is also an existence of the same level as the Eternal Flame. Lin Fan was very interested in this. But in the end, we have to wait until we find the traces of Mandarin, and everything that is said now is false. Yikes. Soon, Lin Fan converged and wanted to be invisible, and directly summoned the Eternal Flame with a wave of his hand. It's not just a weapon. It contains a huge amount of energy, even compared to the Coal Ice treasure box, which is just enough to make good use of it. If it can be refined, it is best to use it to enhance the power of the Phoenix. Buzz. The heaven-devouring demon skill quietly operated, and a black hole appeared in Lin Fan's palm, constantly devouring the energy in the eternal fire. As an eternal flame that claims to never be extinguished, its origin power is endless. Lin Fan could feel the majestic magical power in it. At this moment, under the crazy absorption of the heaven-devouring demon skill, the eternal flame flickered 110 uncertainly, and a faint roar of some kind of anger could be heard. But Lin Fan was unaware of this, refining the energy in the eternal flame with his own care. And the power of the phoenix in his body was also quietly strengthened. At the same time, a ruined planet in the 9 realms. It is covered in hot magma all year round. And in the deepest part of the flaming mountain, a ruined giant palace stands, but it looks like a ruined wall. Suddenly, the entire palace shook violently, and a terrifying power surged out. The surrounding magma suddenly seemed to boil and set off terrifying waves. Roar! Suddenly, an angry roar resounded in the sky. And from the depths of that palace, a huge flame giant walked out of it, his bloodthirsty eyes flashing with anger. Damn Odin! What a damn you! How dare you destroy my origin? Sensing the dimness of the eternal flame, the flame giant roared again and again. He hated to fight Odin to the death immediately. But thinking of Odin's terrifying strength, after a burst of incompetent rage, he could only restrain his anger ruefully. No one knew better than him how terrible Odin was, and that was definitely not something he could deal with. Not to mention that he also lost his own eternal flame. But at this moment, a trace of resonance from the soul provided him with an extremely vague picture. It was a young man refining the eternal flame. The picture is very short and fleeting. But the flame giant was still keenly aware that the young man in the picture was not Odin or the people around Odin. This means that the eternal flame is now in the hands of others. Abominable Odin. I will definitely take revenge. The flame giant gritted his teeth, but a glimmer of hope emerged in his heart. The young man's strength may not be as strong as Odin's. As long as he can find the other party, he may be able to snatch back the eternal flame, and even seek revenge on Odin. Thinking of this, the flame giant immediately strode out of the palace. He walked in a sea of magma and walked outside. He can't find the person in the picture, but he knows who has the ability. And it just so happens that the other party is also Odin's enemy. Lao Fei, I hope you don't let me down. At the same time, far away in the small town of Mexico. With a burst of colorful light, Loki, dressed in a black costume, descended on Earth, his eyes full of cunning. My good brother, is this the world of exile? It's really dirty. Breathing in the dirty air, Loki's face was full of disgust. But his face, Ige, was full of pride. Seeing Thor exiled by their father and even stripped of his divine powers, he couldn't mention how happy he was. And this time he came to Earth, he just wanted to witness Thor's tragic situation. At the same time, he also wants to get back Thor's Mjolnir. Anyway, Thor has been exiled, and there is no chance to return to Asgard in this life, so Thor's Mjolnir cannot be wasted. How to say that it is also an artifact, he holds it in his hand, and his strength can definitely be greatly improved. Thinking of this, Loki's figure flashed. Guided by witchcraft, he headed straight for the most crowded town. It is also unknown that there may be news about Seoul. And coincidentally, when Loki came to the road, a car happened to pass by. On it sat Professor Eric and Daisy. Buzz. Loki's figure flashed, and he came directly to the interior of the car with the help of magic. He then performed hypnotic sorcery again. It's just that ordinary Professor Eric and Daisy are easily controlled by Loki and park the car to the side of the road in a daze. Tell me about the world. Loki cross-examined the two and learned a lot about Earth. And he also learned the original movements of these two people. New York? A bustling city with a race of ants? Maybe it's better informed there. Secretly groaning for a while, Loki said in a commanding tone. Keep driving. Take me to New York. Professor Eric didn't speak, starting the car mechanically. Soon the car was driving on the road again. They went straight to New York. Time flies, and the night is silent. When Lin Fan finished his cultivation the next day, he only felt refreshed, and the phoenix power in his body trembled slightly. That tinder is also getting brighter and brighter, as dazzling as the sun. Lin Fan could feel the majestic energy in the fire. Once the fire is accumulated to the extreme, it will be able to take root and sprout in one fell swoop and achieve the first transformation of the power of the phoenix. At that time, his strength will also be greatly improved again. Buzz. Just as Lin Fan was about to wash up, the space suddenly rippled. Then came Odin's voice in the void. I'm sorry, Lin Fan, Loki is missing, and now I can't find where he is. Hearing this, Lin Fan was dumbfounded. How did Loki disappear? It's not time to jump off the Rainbow Bridge, so why is the plot out of order? Shouldn't it be Thanos who invaded Earth in advance? Nor did he consider that Odin was suspected of prying into his privacy. Lin Fan waved his hand to open any door and came directly to the base of the hand rendezvous. Almost at the same time, Ding also appeared here at the same time. Read violent novels, just go to Feilu Fiction Network. This also shows the strength of Odin. What the hell is going on? Looking at the embarrassed Odin, Lin Fan said angrily. Each of your two sons is worry-free, now don't tell me, you have to let me help you find your son. Ahem, what is that? Odin's face became more and more embarrassed when he heard this. But he still said helplessly. Loki, that kid learned Frigga's witchcraft, even Heimdall can't easily find Loki's location. But don't worry, Loki should be on Earth by now. Heimdall found traces of Loki's bastard's unauthorized use of the Rainbow Bridge. Speaking of this, Odin felt a headache. Loki has the blood of a frost giant. And the frost giants are extremely talented in magic, and Loki is one of the best. Under the tutelage of Frigga, Loki mastered many strange witchcraft. This also gives Loki the ability to act recklessly. He just came to Earth for a walk, and Loki came to Earth privately using the Rainbow Bridge, apparently for Thor. Speaking of which, it's also to blame him. If he hadn't pretended to be seriously injured, Loki would never have dared to act so recklessly. It can only be said that all this is the fault of his old father. Okay, I see. Lin Fan waved his hand indifferently, not bothering to pay attention to Odin's helplessness. This is still for the sake of receiving the gift. Otherwise, with such a family, he would definitely rush people directly, too lazy to mix such a troublesome thing. Loki shouldn't be missing, he's coming for Thor. Thinking of the original plot, Lin Fan said unimpressed. Thor, don't be happier now, don't worry, as soon as Loki appears, I will definitely catch him and exchange it for you. Don't hurt him. When Odin heard this, he quickly wanted to stop it. Lin Fan's strength was so strong that even he felt jealous. How could Loki stop it? If he lacked arms and legs, he would cry to death. Then I don't care. Lin Fan directly made a gesture of wanting to send off guests. Odin quickly waved his hand and said, Don't. I don't mean anything else, I just want you to start lightly, and Loki is also my son anyway. He was adopted. Lin Fan relentlessly debunked. Odin. Ignoring Odin's embarrassment, Lin Fan waved his hand casually. It's not necessarily a bad thing for Loki to come to Earth, just take this opportunity to make Thor suffer. Immediately, Lin Fan directly said the plan. That's all about what would have happened. But because he had to mess around, some plots were deflected, and now he can be guided back with the trend. And taking this opportunity, it can also make Thor suffer. Wait until they show up again at the end and solve all the troubles together. Is that okay? Hearing Lin Fan's plan, the corners of Odin's mouth twitched wildly. Are you sure that this will not kill Thor? That was a destroyer, and with his conquest of the humanoid weapons of the 9 realms, his combat effectiveness even reached the annihilation star. Guide the Loki destroyer to deal with Thor. This is not bullying. What if something happens to Sol? What is this? When Lin Fan heard this, he immediately scoffed. If it's not for the fear that you won't dare, I still want Loki to cooperate with Jotunheim, just to completely eliminate this race in one fell swoop, and save trouble in the future. That said, but Lin Fan was not for Asgard. He wanted to fight the Frost King himself. After all, in his current realm, ordinary enemies are vulnerable, and there are few powerful enemies. It is just this opportunity that you can find the destroyer to test your strength. Perhaps he can also trigger the system mechanism to get new rewards. It would be better if it could attract the Frost King Laufey. However, Lin Fan knew very well that with Odin's cautious personality, he might not agree to his plan. But who knew that Lin Fan was wrong? Hearing Lin Fan's bold plan, Odin was unexpectedly silent. He said in a deep voice after a little hesitation. I think so. What? Now it was Lin Fan's turn to be stunned. I'm just talking, why did you suddenly agree? Aren't you afraid that Loki will recognize the thief as his father? Although Laufey is the father. If Loki returns to the Frost Giants, you will have one less son, and even have to kill Loki and his son. But seeing Odin's solemn expression, Lin Fan tentatively asked. Odin, are you serious? Of course. Odin nodded heavily and said in a deep voice. Ragnarok may come at any time, and if you can take this opportunity to eliminate the threat of the Frost Giant, it will only be good for the whole of Asgard, no harm. Speaking of Ragnarok, Odin's expression became more solemn. It was a prophecy that could destroy Asgard. And as he grew older, he became more and more convinced of this prophecy, and even felt deeply worried. Once he is completely decayed, who else can shoulder the position of guardian? At that time, his unconscious eldest daughter is likely to break the seal. Thinking of that worst-case scenario, Odin's face was solemn. He looked at Lin Fan expectantly. Lin Fan, if I agree with your plan, are you willing to help us deal with the Frost Giant? Lin Fan pretended to be silent, but his heart was already happy. Unexpectedly, Odin was willing to take risks. But that's fine. If he can attract the Frost King Laufey, he can just test his strength and see if he can trigger the system mechanism. Anyway, idle is idle, and it is naturally excellent to be rewarded for being able to prostitute for nothing. Laufey, the King of Frost, should not be his opponent. And as long as he promises, Odin will still owe favors to others, and it is a big favor. If he thought about it like this, Lin Fan felt that he was completely bloody. Yes. Meeting Odin's expectant gaze, Lin Fan nodded indifferently. Seeing this, Odin immediately looked happy. But before he could speak, Lin Fan shook his head and said, But get the price. The conversation with Odin ended quickly. Determining the details of the plan, Odin was sad and happy, and inexplicably felt that he was on a thief's ship. He always felt that Lin Fan was very much looking forward to fighting the Frost Giant. But one way or another, this is indeed an opportunity. Today's enemies in Asgard are mainly the Frost Giants of Jotunheim and Soltel hidden under the Sea of Fire. Of course, there is also darkness that disappears into the depths of the Sea of Stars, but this enemy cannot be found at all. So he can only solve the first two in advance. If the Frost Giant can be destroyed, then Asgard will have one less henchman. So he can't miss this opportunity anyway. Soon Odin directly repented of Asgard. He goes straight to Frisia, informs him of the plan, and makes the illusion that he is about to die suddenly from serious injuries. At the same time, Lin Fan on Earth also began to act. He indifferently commanded the Red Queen. Queen Red, help me monitor the network of the whole United States, I want to know Loki's whereabouts. Already found, Master. Episode 84. Hell's Kitchen, Mink Street. Thor accompanied Jane Foster here and sat in a Chinese hotel. They were waiting for Jane Foster's mentors and classmates. When she learned what happened to her mentor, Jane Foster was so angry that she couldn't help at all. After all, for ordinary people like them, it is very powerless to face the official. It was not that she had not thought of asking Lin Fan for help. Lin Fan saw that his identity was extraordinary. If Lin Fan can help him, let alone an official organization, I am afraid that even if the president comes, he will have to be respectful. But Jane Foster is just thinking in his heart. What is Lin Fan's identity? There was no reason between Lin Fan and her, why should Lin Fan help her? So in the end, Jane Foster didn't say anything either. She just comforted her mentor and Daisy, and then asked the other party to come to New York to find her, and then everyone would discuss countermeasures together. At this time, they waited here to learn that the other party had arrived in New York. Don't worry, Jane. I will definitely help you get your device back. Seeing that Jane Foster was in a bad mood, Thor assured in a loud voice. The two of them had a great time together these 2 days. Under Jane Foster's leadership, he finally experienced the joy of belonging to humanity, which is much more interesting than before in Asgard. It turns out that in the human world, there are not only those hateful white-clothed demons. Especially the bar, Solnai is still fresh in my memory. In the past 2 days of getting along, Thor has also changed his attitude towards Jane Foster, and the two can be regarded as friends. Well, thank you, but I still don't bother you. Jane Foster was touched, but not hopeful. Sol certainly has a very extraordinary origin. But at this time, Thor himself is difficult to protect. Unless Thor can immediately retrieve his divine power, he will not be able to help them at all. I mean, really. Seeing Jane Foster's lack of interest, Sultan was a little dissatisfied. This is nothing short of contempt for Taesol. But before he could say anything, 3 people suddenly walked in outside the hotel, which immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the audience. Ha! Is there a circus show today? Why is there an elk night? A diner who was eating whispered. The rest of the crowd burst into laughter. Many people looked at the person at the door, especially the strange costume of the other party, and suddenly felt very interesting. But their reaction to the man at the door seemed to be a mockery of him. Humph! Give me a mouth! Loki shouted angrily and waved his big hand at the diners. Suddenly, a magic force quietly swept out. Those diners who were eating suddenly felt that the whole person fell into suffocation, covered their necks and fell to the ground with a pop. Those people's faces were red and they were about to suffocate when they saw it. This scene immediately caused a commotion among the people around him. Ah! With the sound of screams, countless people stood up in panic, but there was nowhere to escape. Because Loki was in the way of leaving the hotel. At this time, Thor and Jane Foster also cast their eyes and were attracted by the changes in the hotel. But when he saw Loki in the doorway, Thor exclaimed. Loki? What are you doing here? What? Hearing this, Jane Foster was stunned. Thor actually knew this person? But seeing that this person acted so badly and caused such a big riot as soon as he appeared, she didn't have any good feelings for Loki at all. But then she found that there were 2 familiar people standing behind Loki. Isn't that her mentor and classmate Daisy? But at this time, her 2 acquaintances were standing behind Loki dumbfounded, like 2 puppets. Professor Eric? Daisy? Are you all right? Jane Foster subconsciously exclaimed. Ha! Jane Foster and Thor's exclamations were instantly heard by Loki. He cast a dangerous gaze at the 2. When he saw Thor, Loki's eyes suddenly burst with surprise, but then he was deeply dissatisfied and angry. Boy! I call the good guys. Father exiled you to Earth, and I thought you would have a miserable life. After all the divine power in your body has been deprived by your father. But the results are good. Not only are you not tortured, you don't feel desperate, but you are happily fooling around with human women. Loki, who originally wanted to see Thor's jokes, suddenly said that he couldn't bear it. Thor, you're having a great time. Holding back the anger in his heart, Loki strode over to Thor. He coldly glanced at Jane Foster on the side. Because he hated Thor, even for this ant-like human woman, his eyes were full of deep disgust. At the same time, Jane Foster also felt Loki's hostility. She subconsciously moved to Thor in fear. Thor didn't find out these details. He looked at Loki in disbelief, but then pointed at those ordinary people and angrily rebuked Loki. Loki, you're going too far. How can you casually shoot at ordinary people? They didn't offend you at all. Humph. What a stupid guy. Loki was furious when he heard this, but he was stoic and did not show it. He casually lifted the spells of those ordinary people. Everyone in the hotel was amnestied, and immediately rushed out, and some well-wishers called the police as soon as possible. At this time, only 2 brothers, Thor and Loki, and Jane Foster, were left in the hotel. Loki, why did you come to Earth? Thor asked again. Seeing that Loki lifted the spells of those ordinary people, his attitude eased slightly, and he thought that Loki was here to take him home. With excitement and anticipation on his face, he asked. Did Father ask you to take me back? Father, has he forgiven me? You can't go back. Saul. Loki spoke coldly, and a cold color flashed under his eyes. Just like that, you still want to go back to see your father? Because of your personal stupidity, my father was injured by Laufey, the King of Frost, and he is still lying in bed to recuperate. Letting a stupid guy like you go back will only make your father more sad. What do you mean by that? Sol's heart was abrupt, and he quickly asked. He was inexplicably uneasy. Father is dead. Loki made a sad look and said in a heavy tone. Because of your reckless behavior, the Frost Giant attacked Asgard, and the war broke out, and my father was seriously injured by the Frost King Laufey and died. What? Hearing this, Sultan's mind collapsed. Jane Foster on the side was also shocked. You must know that the Asgardian gods, which are mythical and legendary characters, how could they die so easily? Especially Thor, isn't their father Odin? That's a god king. Most importantly, didn't God King Odin just make a deal with Lin Fan? How did it suddenly die after only a few days? Jane Foster's heart was full of doubts. But in the face of the unscrupulous Loki, she did not dare to express her doubts, and could only secretly observe her Loki. Impossible. When pigs fly. Thor shouted, glaring at Loki and scolding. Father is so powerful, how can he die so easily? You must have lied to me, right? Soul, calm down, father is gone. This is a fact. Loki directly interrupted Thor's words and reprimanded. We are brothers, of course I won't lie to you, but I also hate you for killing my father. Phew. Saying that, Loki exhaled deeply, as if very distressed. He made a look of helplessness and said, Soul, you know, my father has always been in poor health, and this war has aggravated his physical deterioration, so? How so? How so? Thor was already in chaos at this time, and his mood sank to the bottom. He didn't expect things to come to this point. Originally, after learning that his exile was just a test, he thought about passing the test and returning to Asgard. As a result, now he suddenly learned the news of his father's death, and his mentality suddenly exploded. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. He couldn't forgive himself anyway. Loki, please take me back, I will personally apologize to my father. Thor grabbed Loki's arm expectantly. But Loki shook his head and said in a deep voice. I'm sorry, I can't take you back. Why? Thor asked in disbelief. We are brothers, can't you help me? Please, Loki. This is one of the conditions for the truce. Meeting Thor's gaze, Loki vetoed. In order to end the war with Jotunheim, I have made a pact with Laufey, King of Frost, that you must be exiled forever and must not repent. Saying that, Loki shook Thor's hand away. He walked slowly out the window, his back to Thor, and the corners of his mouth slightly hooked into a playful smile. And he also said more icy words. The Queen Mother also agreed to this. As soon as these words came out, Thor was hit by 5 thunders. He slumped to the ground. If learning of his father's death plunged him into great guilt, it would be complete despair. Did their most beloved Queen Mother even give up on him? If this is the case, then what is the point of him continuing to live? It's better to apologize directly to death. 4. Jane Foster watched silently, and couldn't help but feel some sympathy. And she was keenly aware of a hint of abnormality. Not to mention that from Lin Fan's mouth before, they learned about Odin's deal, obviously with great expectations for Thor. How could the mythical god king alone die so easily? And Loki's attitude is also very abnormal. Loki seemed to care about Thor, but his words were word for word, as if to make Thor miserable and desperate. If you really care about Thor, you should say these things tactfully. Loki seemed to have deliberately stimulated Thor. I'm sorry, Queen Mother. I'm sorry. Thor kept repeating the words of apology. Loki looked back at Thor condescendingly, his eyes flashing with smugness. But on the surface, he said with a sad face. Thor, I came to tell you this time, I hope you don't feel guilty, I will do my duty as the new king, so that Asgard is no longer threatened by any enemies. New king? Loki you. Thor, who heard this, raised his head blankly. His mouth opened, but in the end he didn't say anything, just nodded dejectedly. Please, Loki. Asgard is left to you. Say sorry to the Queen Mother for me. Saying that, Thor lost his voice again, and there was nothing to say. I will. Loki nodded and turned directly to walk outside. He walked without replying. Thor, hello to yourself. Asgard is bound to get better and better. At the same time as the words fell, Loki's figure disappeared in the doorway. A colorful light carried Loki away. Thor watched all this silently, his eyes full of longing, but in the end it only turned into deep despair. Thor, are you okay? Jane Foster looked at Thor with a worried expression. But Thor didn't say a word at all. Seeing this, Jane Foster's pretty face was full of worry, and she didn't know what to say. At this time, she also saw Professor Eric and Daisy on the side. Because of the control of Loki's magic, even if Loki left at this time, the two still stood there dumbfounded. Looking at this situation, the anger in Jane Foster's heart could not be contained. This Loki is simply too much. Wantonly shooting at ordinary people, and even turning her friends into this, is a complete damn bastard. And she always felt that Loki had bad intentions, and those words he said might not be credible. "Thor, I don't think your father is dead," Jane Foster said in a deep voice to Thor. But Thor just looked at her stunned, and then lowered his head again, apparently thinking that this was just Jane Foster's comfort. "I mean, really?" Jane Foster became more and more anxious when he saw this. But she was not angry, but forced herself to say anxiously, "Have you forgotten what Mr. Lin said? Your father exiled you to Earth to test you. And your father also made a deal with Mr. Lin because of this. This also proves that your father has done a lot of things silently for you. So in fact, your father values you very much." Jane Foster spoke of her analysis. But Thor just listened silently and didn't react to anything, because the words were useless. On the contrary, these words made him feel more and more guilty. Most importantly, Jane Foster took a deep breath and said in a startling manner, "Your father is God King Odin. I don't know how strong he is, but I don't think he can die so easily. If you want your father to be alive, cheer yourself up. We can completely ask Mr. Lin for confirmation of this matter. What's more, even if it's true, shouldn't you cheer up and regain your divine power to avenge your father?" As soon as these words came out, Sultan was shocked. "Mr. Lin? Avenge?" Hearing Lin Fan's name, Sol's eyes burst with hope. Not to mention whether his father was really dead. As Jane Foster said. Anyway, things are already like this, so why doesn't he want to find a way to recover his divine power, so that at least he can avenge his father? On the contrary, if Loki was lying to him, then his father would not have to die. So no matter how you look at it, he will not have a greater loss. That's right. Let's go find Mr. Lin. Standing up, Thor looked angry. His heart was filled with endless hatred. If he can regain his divine power, he must make the frost giant Laufey pay. Wait a minute, Thor. Seeing that Thor wanted to leave directly, Jane Foster hurriedly said, "Can you help me take them both? They were my mentors and classmates, but were enchanted by your brother and now become this puppet." "What? Loki, that bastard." Hearing this, Sultan was furious. He didn't expect Loki to be so excessive. You must know that this kind of magic, if you can't contact it as soon as possible, it is likely to damage the spirit and even the soul. "Jane, don't worry, let's go find Mr. Lin, he will definitely be able to help you," Thor said, picking up the two one by one. The group soon left the hotel. This was Hell's Kitchen, and they soon arrived at the base of the Hand Guild, found Apocalypse, and asked, "Mr. Apocalypse, we want to see Mr. Lin, can we?" "Sorry, the owner is not there." Apocalypse shook his head, and said lightly but politely, "The master has other things to do, has already left, you can wait here first." "Huh? Absence?" Hearing Lin Fan's absence, Sultan became anxious. Jane Foster was also worried. Seeing the reaction of the two, Apocalypse glanced at Professor Eric and Daisy, who were brought by them, and pointed out, "Do you have something going on? Maybe I can help you." In fact, Lin Fan was on the top floor of the base at this time. But he did not take the initiative to appear, but silently watched the play, thinking of using this to polish this guy's reckless and impulsive nature. "I'm sure Odin will be grateful to him, right?" Episode 85. Hey, yes. Hearing the words of the Apocalypse, Sultan was hindsight. He suddenly realized that the Apocalypse was also strong. The same goes for Jane Foster. Thinking that the Apocalypse was Lin Fan's subordinates, they quickly pointed to Professor Eric and the two. "They were put under mind control, can you help lift it?" "It's easy." The Apocalypse was indifferent, and the wave of his hand lifted the magic. The people who watched it in Sultan were dumbfounded. It's just that one of Lin Fan's subordinates, how strong is the strength, and he lifted Loki's magic at will. You know, Loki's magic was learned from their mother. Even if the Apocalypse is powerful, but this is too powerful, right? At this moment, Professor Eric and Daisy snorted. The two woke up in a daze. But looking at the surrounding environment, the two looked confused, but then they saw Jane Foster and the others. "Jane? Why are you here?" Daisy exclaimed in surprise. Their consciousness, still stuck a day ago, thought they were in a small Mexican town. But at this time, they were suddenly surprised to see Jane Foster. Professor Eric rubbed his swollen head. "My head hurts." Scolding secretly, Professor Eric looked at Jane Foster and asked, "Jane, are you all right? Who are these?" Saying that, he looked warily at Apocalypse and Thor. Although he was not feeling well at this time, he saw that there were two more strange men beside his students, and as a mentor, he suddenly became vigilant. And no matter how you look at it, the Apocalypse gives people a sense of danger. That is, Thor looks slightly humble. "I'm okay, Professor. Jane Foster shook her head, keenly aware of her mentor's thoughts. He quickly pointed to the two of the Apocalypse and introduced. These two are. Yes. Jane Foster, who was about to be introduced, suddenly froze. Because she suddenly realized that whether it was Thor or Apocalypse, her identity was actually very sensitive. Even the experiences of Professor Eric and Daisy she couldn't explain. You can't just say that you were kidnapped by aliens, right? I'm afraid that if she tells the truth, the other party will definitely think that her brain is broken, or she has been brainwashed by Thor and the Apocalypse. Jane, don't be afraid if there is something you can directly say. Seeing this, Professor Eric suddenly became more vigilant. He directly protected Jane Foster behind him, looked at the Apocalypse with a calm face, and said, "Who the hell are you?" Apocalypse frowned, a little speechless. If it weren't for Jane Foster's face, others would dare to talk to him like this, and there would be absolutely no place to die. In the face of Professor Eric's questioning, he directly chose to ignore it. Who are you again? Why question me? Thor was not used to Professor Eric in the slightest. Even if he knew that the other party was Jane Foster's mentor, he also did not have a good face. Ah. Jane Foster was helpless when she saw this. Seeing that a conflict was about to break out, she was afraid that her mentor would heat up the wrong person, so she quickly said in a circle. Professor, this matter is a long story, let's talk about it slowly. Jane Foster directly pulled everyone to sit down. Then she said in a deep voice. I know this may not be acceptable to you, but this is the truth. Just a day ago, Professor, you two were controlled by aliens, and we rescued you from aliens just now. As soon as these words came out, Professor Eric was immediately dumbfounded. Daisy was even more confused. Alien? Control? What international joke? Enough, Jane. Professor Eric immediately scolded angrily. If you don't want to be honest with us, you can just say that Daisy and I will leave now. Professor, I really didn't lie to you. Jane Foster helplessly explained. If you don't believe me, look at your phone, this is New York, not New Mexico. Professor Eric immediately took out his mobile phone. When he saw the place names displayed on the map, he immediately exclaimed. How is that possible? Aren't we in town? How did you suddenly come to New York? Daisy also looked at her phone with wide eyes. Here's the thing. After getting Saul's permission, Jane Foster no longer hesitated. She immediately explained the matter. But she hid Lin Fan's existence. Hearing her words, Professor Eric was first dumbfounded, and then exclaimed. Impossible. When pigs fly. Aliens, you liar? Not to mention the farce of Jane Foster and others. At this time, on the top floor of the building, Apocalypse, who left alone, came here and saw Lin Fan, who was sitting there silently. Master, I have already done what you have explained. Well, got it. Lin Fan nodded indifferently and waved his hand casually. But the Apocalypse did not leave. Meeting Lin Fan's gaze, he said slowly. Master Chiyu, there is news from Mrs. Gao's side that the ninja of the Hands Association mysteriously disappeared while tracking Killian, and there are no bones left. According to the analysis of the situation at that time, I guess it should be the people of the Ten Commandments gang who made a move. It is likely that our investigation was detected by the Ten Commandments gang. The Apocalypse directly tells the latest situation. And Lin Fan suddenly became interested when he heard this, and said with great interest. The Ten Commandments gang has moved? Originally, this organization is very mysterious. But since learning that the controller of the Ten Rings gang, Lord Man, is actually Su Wenwu in the Ten Rings, this layer of mystery has completely disappeared. Although he still doesn't know where the Ten Commandments gang is, it is only a matter of time before he finds the other party. Now the actions of the Hand Association have finally attracted the attention of the Ten Commandments gang. I believe that as long as you continue to throw the bait, you will soon be able to lure the snake out of the hole and find the location of the Mandarin. Order. Secretly groaning, Lin Fan said indifferently. Let the Han Union increase its strength, I want to see how long that Mandarin can endure. Yes, Master. Apocalypse heard and left. At the same time, far away in the small town of New Mexico, Loki returns here with the help of the Rainbow Bridge. With the help of stealth sorcery, he soon came to Mjolnir and quietly sneaked into the temporary shield camp. At this time, after many days of research on Mjolnir, they still achieved nothing. Coulson's anxious hair was about to grow. Oh, a bunch of idiots. Looking at the group of researchers next to Mjolnir, Loki sneered secretly. Mjolnir is an artifact that their father, Odin, collected the core of the shattered planet and forged it by the Dwarf King himself. Such an artifact has terrifying power, how can mortals covet it? He directly waved his hand to perform the technique of mental hypnosis. The group of agents who were next to Mjolnir suddenly felt that their spirits were sluggish, and then they fell to the ground with a pop. After doing this, Loki directly dispelled the stealth effect. He couldn't wait to walk next to Mjolnir. Such a powerful artifact, wouldn't it be a violent heavenly thing to fall into such a place? Thinking proudly, Loki directly reached out and held the handle of the hammer. He wanted to take Mjolnir away. And at the same time, Coulson, who was far away in the monitoring room, noticed the abnormality for the first time. The agent next to him shouted in shock. "Not good. Captain, something happened over there in the crater." Seeing their colleagues faint inexplicably, the agents instantly sensed that something was wrong. But Coulson raised his hand and stopped. "Don't worry. Take another look." Almost at the same time as he said this. "Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network." I saw that in the picture. Loki suddenly appeared strangely out of thin air, and then quickly walked to the side of Mjolnir. This scene suddenly stunned everyone in the monitoring room. Those agents said with solemn faces, "Captain, it's a superpower. Didn't they want to take away the hammer? Shall we stop him?" "Right away." "Wait a minute." Coulson was about to say yes. But when he saw Loki holding the handle of the hammer and preparing to take Mjolnir's hammer, he immediately stopped the group of subordinates again. Because he suddenly wanted to see if this guy could pick up Mjolnir. You know, they used a lot of unconventional means. But no matter how they acted, there was no way to get Mjolnir. This thing is like growing with the earth. Now that Loki, who is suspected of being superpowered, may or may not surprise him. The crowd looked straight at the surveillance screen. I saw that in the picture. Loki confidently held the handle of the hammer, and his arm tried to pick up Mjolnir with a slight force. But alas, it backfired. With the physique of the Loki Protoss, there are hundreds of pounds of grip strength with a light effort. But he was stunned that he couldn't even shake Mjolnir. Loki's face changed slightly. Thinking that Mjolnir was magical, and it was the core of the planet, he immediately used all his strength. It's just that nothing has changed this time, and Mjolnir is not moving. Damn it! How so? Loki was suddenly dumbfounded. But he did not believe in evil, and directly cast a bunch of countless things, and made various increases on himself. But the result is still unable to shake Mjolnir. It wasn't until this time that Loki finally realized. Mjolnir is either forbidden or confessed to the Lord, and only that guy from Thor can easily pick it up. Abominable Thor. Why is he the only one with such treatment? Loki was suddenly furious, envious, and jealous. It was a treatment he had never had before. Thinking of Odin's differential treatment, his face was extremely ugly, and his mood was also extremely bad. And at this moment, the group ran over from a distance. The person leading the team is none other than Coulson. After seeing that Loki could not pick up Mjolnir, he was disappointed, and he also led his men here as soon as possible. For Loki, a strangely dressed superpower, they must catch it. Up! Catch him for me! Coulson waved his hand. A group of subordinates immediately held weapons and approached Loki step by step, and the weapons in their hands were black and swarthy. But whenever Loki moves, they will not hesitate to pull the trigger. Humph! Fine death! Seeing this, Loki was extremely angry, and his eyes flashed with an icy cold zero. Immediately, he directly waved his hand to release witchcraft. In a burst of black air, these shield agents only felt a violent shock in their bodies, and flew out violently and fell to the ground. What's more, his face turned pale for a while, and he collapsed to the ground with a pop. In the blink of an eye, only Coulson was left on the field. Shoo! Finished! Coulson's eyes widened, and he suddenly realized that he had kicked the iron plate. This superpower is simply a little too strong. Even looking at the weirdness of his ability, I am afraid that the only one who can compare with it is that Lin Fan, right? Just as Coulson was shocked, Loki's figure flashed closer. He slapped a palm directly on Coulson's chest. Suddenly, a burst of black air flowed. Coulson Eentang turned black, and his mind fell to the ground as soon as he fainted. Weak answer waste. Loki sneered disdainfully and glanced at Mjolnir unwillingly. But in the end, he had no choice but to give up and take it for himself. Hate gritted his teeth, and Loki left the temporary camp in a flash, returning directly to Asgard through the Rainbow Bridge. What Loki didn't know was that the situation here was being watched remotely by someone far away in Hell's Kitchen at this time. Master, this guy is so annoying. It's all Protoss, or Thor looks a little more pleasing to the eye. Looking at the situation in the picture, the Red Queen complained and said. Lin Fan was non-committal when he heard this. Although he did not approve of Loki's behavior, he did not feel disgusted. This is not only because he has no affection for the serpent shield. What is more important is that people do not die for themselves. In Loki's position, he just wants to get his things back, and Coulson and others are malicious thieves. If Coulson and the others are strong, then Loki naturally has nothing to say. But the fact is that Loki's strength far exceeds that of Coulson and others. This also led to the provocation of Coulson and others, which was completely self-defeating. Okay, Red Queen. Waving his hand at will, Lin Fan turned off the projection screen and said indifferently, "What happened to the things you checked?" The Red Queen suddenly became embarrassed. But under Lin Fan's gaze, the projection of the Red Queen made a cute look, and said coquettishly, "The Brotherhood uses a private network, much like the X-Courtyard, and although people find out about the island where they are located, I can't get into the situation on the island." Speaking of this, the Red Queen looked very unhappy. But in the face of this situation, she was helpless. After all, she is just a virtual data, not even a server, and some things are really more than enough. If this involves mysterious sides such as superpowers, she will be even more powerless. That's it. Lin Fan raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard this. For the group of superpowers of the Brotherhood, he couldn't help but become more curious. The superpowers of this world are indeed strange. X is equipped with a brainwave enhancer, which can be networked with its own spirit, and it is even possible to radiate spiritual power to the whole world in an instant. The Brotherhood even had the same means to prevent the leakage of the base. It can only be said that the world is big, and there are no wonders. It seems that if I have the opportunity, I will have to go on it myself. Lin Fan was very interested in those magical superpowers. Although most of them are not strong, there are some peculiar abilities that may be of great help to him. 3.2. But before that, it is still necessary to solve the mess of Thor's family. Buzz. As soon as his mind moved, Lin Fan directly cast some kind of magic that's used to make connections across galaxies. After a short time, he directly contacted Odin, who was far away in Asgard, and said indifferently, "Loki, I found him, he's so restless." Immediately, Lin Fan directly explained what Loki had done. Odin, who was pretending to be dead, heard this, and said with some embarrassment, "What, Loki is still young, he is indeed impulsive to do things, Lin Xiaoyu, please forgive me more." "He, thousands of years old, you and I are still young?" Lin Fan suddenly mocked mercilessly. Odin's face became even more embarrassed. Lin Fan didn't bother to pay attention to this, he was telling the truth, and did not have the idea of Xingshi asking for guilt. Indifferently looking at Odin on the other side of the communication, Lin Fan said in a deep voice, "Loki has returned to Asgard, how is it over there? Don't show your stuffing." "Don't worry, Lin Xiaoyu." Seeing that Lin Fan didn't mean to get to the bottom of it, Odin breathed a sigh of relief. He quickly assured in his serious book, "I have arranged that Heimdall will inform Loki of my death, including Frigga's side, and Loki will definitely not be able to resist contacting Jotunheim's side at that time. It's just..." "How? Are you worried about Loki's direct defection? Do you recognize the thief as the father?" Lin Fan saw Odin's concern and asked meaningfully. He could also emphasize the term fatherhood of thieves. Odin's face suddenly turned dark, but he sighed helplessly and shook his head. "Lin Xiaoyu, don't laugh. Loki is my child and I believe his heart will always be with Asgard. But he's adopted." Lin Fan mended the knife mercilessly. "Odin.